God, this is one of those that just had such high expectations coming in. And somehow not only met them, it actually kind of exceeded them a little bit. I like this book a lot. And I think it's one of those where I'm feeling good about kind of stepping outside of my comfort zone once in a while and reading, a crime novel, a mystery novel, things like that. Not always just fantasy and horror and sci-fi. And it's quite fun to kind of tone it down a little bit. Get kind of a smaller community, a smaller cast of characters. The world building's done because I know about Earth. It's made it a little easier, I think, on some things to really get into some of these and keep you from avoiding the dreaded B word, which is burnout, and you don't ever want that. But loved all these books, man. It was a really, really good reading month, and that makes this decision even harder. We're going to get into book of the month here. Now, I know a lot of people think they know if they watch the weekly updates. Usually, you know the winner of this. But they probably also know, well, he liked this book a lot, but I know he also liked that book a lot. So which one am I going to choose, guys? You know that it is coming down between Blackmouth and Mystic River. This is one of the hardest choices of all time. And I'm afraid, guys, I am going to have to take the chicken shit route here. Because for the first time ever, we have co-books of the month because I cannot pick because these are two S-tier books. And the thing is, there's a lot of similarities. There's also a lot of differences. They both deal with three childhood friends where something really, really bad happens. And it deals with the person they become as adults and how they dealt with it. Some people dealt with what happened and they got stronger for it. Other people never dealt with it and their lives became a mess and they never really were able to move on. So with these two, that's about the limit of their similarities, I think. Obviously, Ronald Malfi is a much more horror and supernatural horror. This one is more real life horror. I will say the reason that Mystic River, let's talk about each one first. With Mystic River, I think what really got me with this is the parent stuff. If you have kids, the first third of this book is going to absolutely destroy you. It's very, very tough to read. It was so tough to read. At one point, I put it down and finished the fantasy horror book because this was so horrific. Does that make sense? But this absolutely incredible character work. I had heard how good Dennis Lehane was. This, I mean, it keeps you guessing all the way to the end. But man, I felt like I knew Jimmy, I knew Dave, I knew Sean inside and out. Too much so that when I watched the movie at the beginning, knowing what happens to those kids, I was already like heartbroken because I felt like I knew them because I read this first. Absolutely incredible book, superb character work. I think it does that thing where I figured out half of it. I figured out half because he sets it up to look like, well, it's a no-brainer who the killer is. But I kept saying it's just too on the nose for a book like this. And I think it was like half of it I figured out. You kind of have to read it, you have to watch to understand what I'm talking about. I kind of figured out half of it, but it was never something that was like easy. And I am very much an along for the ride type of reader. So it's one of those where I say it's a good thing, but it's also really, really genius what he does where you won't figure it out. And it doesn't matter if you figure it out. What happens at the end is still absolutely devastating. This book hasn't left my brain for the week that I've finished it now. I have thought about it every single day, and to me that is the mark of an absolutely great book. Same with Blackmouth. I read it at the beginning of the month. With this, I love that Stephen King format. This is something that happened when we were all childhood friends. Something really, really bad happened. Some kind of maybe supernatural figure kind of comes into our lives, and things go to shit. And then we come back together as adults after a tragedy brings us all back together, and we got to kind of face those demons and go and stare down everything that ruined our lives as kids. And the only thing that would have made this more like a Stephen King book was if the protagonist had been a writer. That was the only thing. It got a character that's suffering from alcohol withdrawal, going back and falling off the wagon over and over again, and dealing with that really traumatic event as a kid. And with this, I just related to these kids so much because I feel like what Stephen King's always able to do with the kids is like if you couldn't relate to one of those kids, you knew one of those kids. And for me, it also kind of got me some parent stuff because there is a special needs kid in here, and I have a special needs kid, and seeing him as an adult, and it just really endeared that character to me a lot. This book, this is the first time I've read a horror book in ages where I was really, really torn to say goodbye. Because I love those characters so much. His character work in here is so dang good. And I felt like it was like Losers Club almost, where I felt like I was there with those characters battling this great evil. It's just so damn good, man. That's why I know it's a chicken shit thing to say. Oh, it's like that someone's saying like, oh, I got co-best men or something. No, I would never do this unless it's just, these are both going to be on my top 10 at the end of the year. I mean, it's undoubtable, unless I just have like the greatest reading year of all time, because these are two all-timers. And it has me excited to read more Dennis Lehane. But for this, guys, I have been looking for that horror author that gets me excited like this for a long time. This modern horror author that really gets me thinking I'm going to love, because I liked Come With Me, and I thought he was right there on the edge of greatness. It wasn't really quite what I was looking for. This was everything I've been looking for in horror. And it's got me excited because I feel like this is right when I discovered Blake Crouch. For so many years, people told me, oh, well, you know, this author's a lot like Michael Crichton. And I'd read them like they are not like Michael Crichton. I read Blake Crouch, and right away I knew, holy shit, yes, this is the way that Dr. Crichton made me feel. This gave me those young Stephen King vibes. And if his books are continue to be like this, I mean, it's hard for me not just to say, screw my schedule, screw my plans. I'm just going to read his entire bibliography, which I think I'm going to do, but not like that. But I'm going to be reading a lot more Ronald Malfi, like almost like a book a month here in the future, because I'm very, very excited about this. And that's why I can't pick between these two, because both these books have dominated my thoughts this month. And for me, there's a lot of books where I'm like, they're good, and you don't even think about them a day later. If it's been a month and a week and you're still thinking about these two books, they did something right. And that's why I have first time ever, guys, book of the month. Pick them both up. If you like a little bit of horror, I say go with this one. Real life horror, obviously. And if you want some supernatural horror, the coming of age stuff that I love so much, this is going to be exact, because this has a little bit more coming of age than this one does. Because this one, it's kids, and then it kind of pops to them as adults. This one, you kind of see both sides of it in that It fashion where it's going back and forth. So, yeah, highest recommends for both these guys, and that's why, first time ever, co-books of the month. Mystic River, Dennis Lehane, Blackmouth, Ronald Malfi. Check them out.